This is Voices for Climate, the podcast where activists, scientists, innovators, and everyday people speak out for our planet. If you're looking for honest conversations, bold ideas, and real climate solutions, you're in the right place. My name is Arnav, and today we're joined by Prajya Sharma. Prajya is a lead product manager at AI Dash, building the climate risk intelligence system for utilities and energy infrastructure companies. She has a background in climate tech, energy infrastructure, and software technology. Previously, she worked with Amazon and the Clean Energy Ventures. She's also an electrical engineer and has an MBA from Harvard Business School. Prajya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Arna, for that wonderful introduction.
Yeah, so to start off, can you maybe share what drew you to work at the intersection of technology and sustainability?
Yeah, so I've been in this space for quite some time now, I think over 10 years, and the interest really sparked during my undergraduate studies in electrical engineering. We did a lot of work in power transmission, power transmission systems, distribution systems, etc. It so happened that I was part of a community called Engineers Without Borders. It's a global community, and the one of the projects that we picked up was, or the goal of Engineers Without Borders is to essentially use technology for a social cause or for a social good. So we did interesting projects like leveraging solar energy for building solar light bulbs, or using ceramic water filters, or building ceramic water filters for water filtration projects in low-income communities. And a lot of these projects made me realize that access to electricity, access to power is and also leveraging technology to improve access to power, energy systems, etc. And all of this, mind you, was back in India, where there are about, I would say, 30% of our community that's still living without electricity. I felt like that was the best use of my engineering degree and my education. So that really sparked my interest, and I guess I haven't looked back ever since. I started working in consulting, worked in energy and utilities, did a lot of work around investing in climate technologies, and yeah, everything that you mentioned then in the introduction.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And so I guess, what brought you from, engineering on one hand to sort of coming to the United States and then sort of delving into more product management as you do now?
I think I realized during, I mean, I am an engineer for sure, but what always attracted me or interested me was the business side of the work that we do. So I was always interested in, okay, what kind of business models we can build out of this. Um, so that idea or that focus area of how can we use technology for sustainable businesses was something that always would spark my interest more than, you know, just being an engineer, I think. So it would have been great from if I had the opportunity to do a minor in business while studying engineering, but I guess I thought to make up for that, why not do an MBA? Because I was always working at the cross section of technology and business, but I didn't have a formal business education as such.
Mhm.
And I think that is what drew me to thinking about doing an MBA. And then, of course, the next step was figuring out like what kind of a business school education do I want? And I always felt that I would love to be immersed in a global, like a global education environment. And that's what drew me to a Harvard Business School because it's one of the few business schools across the world where about 50%, or I may be misquoting, but I think about 40 to 50% of the class is international. So, you get to spend time with someone from Dominican Republic and Egypt and so many other countries. So I knew like that is something that I would really value in my education. So that is why I made the move to the US.
I see. Yeah, that's very interesting to hear. And so, can you maybe delve more into kind of what you do at AI Dash and sort of, what the company does?
Absolutely. So AI Dash is a Series C startup, and the North Star goal of AI Dash is to help energy utilities or energy infrastructure companies essentially um, become more cost efficient. So essentially what AI Dash does is build a software stack, leverages AI and machine learning models to identify areas of cost inefficiencies in the energy infrastructure space and enable utilities to make more cost-effective decisions, reduce their operational burden, and so on and so forth. So that's broadly what AI Dash does, but AI Dash started with their flagship product called the Intelligent Vegetation Management System. And what they do is they help utilities optimize their vegetation trimming cycle. So think of like, all the vegetation across transmission lines and distribution lines in the right of way of power lines across, and utility networks span like hundreds and thousands of miles. So the idea really sparked in like how can we use satellite technology, AI, to help utilities make better decisions on vegetation trimming. And that was the core flagship product, but that slowly, gradually, and as the company was working with utilities, we identified other areas where we could make an impact. And climate risk intelligence system was an idea that was born from understanding utility space further and drilling customers in terms of what they need. What we understood that 80% of outages or power failures that utilities experience is in some form or shape caused by weather events. So they can be caused by storms, they could be windstorms, snowstorms, ice loading, and even wildfires. So when climate related risk is such a mammoth, um, I would say, burden on the utilities, helping them be better prepared was a piece that we thought is worth going after or a problem worth solving. And that's how the product Climate Risk Intelligence System was born, with the idea of helping utilities be better prepared. Well, first, to understand how vulnerable their systems and infrastructure is to climate related disasters. Second, to preempt how those disasters might impact their systems. And thirdly, how to prepare effectively to reduce and minimize the impact and then restore power as quickly as possible. So that's the area that I've been working on. So I'm the lead product manager for the climate risk intelligence system.
I see. Yeah, and so, I kind of like the way you put it as to how this is sort of like a mammoth-sized problem. And so, how do you, in your work, maybe ensure that sort of this resilience efforts aren't just prioritized for wealthier or urban areas? And maybe not just even in your work, but maybe government policies. Like, how do you think that we can better ensure that even poorer and rural areas can access this sort of resilience?
Yeah, and that's a wonderful point. So, Arnav, I believe like in the last few years, utilities have understood that the impact of climate-related disasters or any disaster as such does end up impacting the low-income communities, the at-risk communities more than some of the not the other communities. So we in fact have seen utilities setting up centers or departments which work specifically with at-risk communities. In fact, in states like New Mexico, Colorado, where there are, I would say, preserved areas and tribal communities, and preserved tribes, we've seen utilities do active work in ensuring that those areas are cordoned off in the sense that those areas get the most proactive restoration efforts from the utilities. Those areas are also sort of highlighted as, well, not high risk zones as such, but zones that where the time to restoration should be minimum as possible. I think that comes from a point of understanding that a lot of these areas and communities do not usually have backup power options as say some of the other communities may have. So I think that's a realization that I've seen happen over the past few years. Um, and I've seen a lot of our customers, the ones that we work with directly, building resources, building the kind of systems that can help them service those communities more proactively.
Hmm. And since working with those directly with the customers, who face the challenges that AI Dash aims to solve, would you say maybe your view of the climate crisis has sort of changed after interacting with customers from various backgrounds?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, well, one very obvious change that we've seen is that for a very long time, a lot of utilities would, a lot of energy infrastructure companies, even meteorologists, would sort of categorize certain parts of the year as, okay, this is a high wildfire time, or this is a high storm risk time. Okay, these are the 3 months that we need to be on alert. But Very unfortunately, what has happened is because of the climate change, across the globe, we're seeing the impact of climate and disasters all year round. We've seen wildfires in the month of February. We've seen storms occur in the month of March, which is uncalled for. And what that has led to is for a lot of these industries, and I think world over, for customers, for people that we work with to be prepared and to take mitigate to basically be on guard all year round because due to the climate change disasters are unpredictable, they're happening at any time. And while I think what we help them do essentially is have that level of preparedness and that level of insight all year round. um, and sorry, what was the second part of your question? I'm not sure if I answered the second one.
That was it. Yeah, I guess kind of like how your view of the climate crisis has changed.
Oh yeah, yeah. Things have totally upended essentially.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm sure you interact with a lot of different customers, and definitely it's an issue that faces sort of all of us. And I think you kind of already touched on this, but maybe would you say like if there's any common misconceptions that people might have about making infrastructure climate resilient that you've seen?
Well, of course, one is that, the weather patterns across the world are changing. You need to be prepared all year round. So that's definitely a misconception that we've seen utilities learn, or at least that's a lesson that the utilities and a lot of energy infrastructure companies have learned the hard way, unfortunately.
Mhm.
The other piece around is also, I think, awareness among the utilities. So even when we talk about building resilience to climate disasters, there's obviously a part where they need to make infrastructural upgrades, use better technology. And by technology, I mean hardware, have IoT sensors in place, smoke detectors in place. But there's also now a greater realization that the best way to combat natural disasters is to build natural defenses. So what are now a lot of utilities, at least, so I'll just give you an example. A lot of utilities now that are at prone for wildfire risk have understood that vegetation-related defensible systems are probably some of the best ways to curb wildfire-related disasters. So they are planting sort of fire resistant trees to some extent. Well, none of the trees are absolutely fire resistant, but they're
Mhm.
taking, but they've taken a lot of ideas from nature itself to build defenses for the nature, if I were to put it this way. And I think that is something that makes me really happy, where we're basically going back to age-old wisdoms. And apart from, of course, as we move forward in technological upgrades, we're also looking at what are some of the natural ways to build defenses. And that's, I think, is also progress in itself.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of want to focus sort of on the AI aspects of your work now. So, as you mentioned, AI Dash, and it's in the name, kind of uses an AI-driven approach. Why specifically AI? Like, how do you think AI is sort of a game changer when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, so I think to answer that, let me give you a little bit of context on how things were done before companies like AI Dash came in. So utilities are, infrastructure as a sector has been, I would say, it's not a leading industry, it's a lagging industry when it comes to technology adoption. And a lot of times, in fact, most like up until 5 years ago, maybe a lot of these utilities, specifically the smaller ones, were very much reliant on manual methods to understanding where the risk might be. So, for example, they would look at the past 2 years and say that, well, this is how we were hit last year, and this is our projection, or this is our estimate of how we maybe hit that, this year. So there was less analytics, more experiential or experience-based analysis to um, understanding of, preparation or mitigation. And of course, experience goes a long way. But as we'd already talked about this, since the weather cycles are changing, everything that was true a year ago or 2 years ago may not be true now. So, and we've actually, when I would go and meet the customers, I saw real examples of the operations and incident management committees and systems doing calculations on pen and paper, or like, bringing out a register where they had noted down, okay, these were the outages in the area X 10, 1 year ago. This is what we can predict in area X today. So it was very, very manual. So of course, there was a lot of scope, one, for leveraging technology to make a lot of their predictions more accurate. Second, also to help them fast track some of these decisions, right? Well, accuracy is definitely one. The second was whenever there is a lot of manual decision making involved, it is time consuming. And when utilities or energy infrastructure companies are facing these disasters, sometimes, but not sometimes, all of the times, time is of essence. You probably have 6 hours before a storm hits or a day before a wildfire, prediction is made to ensure that your infrastructure is safe and, whatever you can do. So time is really of essence. And we report that. We call that like um, time to event. So with these two basic pillars that, well, one, we need to help them improve accuracy, and second, reduce time to predictions. We thought that the technology that can help do this is, it's right there. We just need to build systems on it. So we don't just use AI. We essentially have built, of course, like we have proprietary machine learning AI-based models. What we do is we leverage the help of satellite technology, LiDAR. You integrate data from different IoT sensors. We use weather forecasts, so forecasts for up to 7 days, and also like historical, like going back like 30, 50 years to understand, like using again historical data, weather forecast, satellite technology, etc., to understand how a particular area, a particular utility asset, which could be a transmission line, transformer, a pole specific, like as small as a pole, would be impacted. Like what's our risk prediction 3 days down the line or 7 days down the line?
Mhm.
So, in the most simplistic terms, it's like leveraging all possible input sources that can help us understand how a particular area or an asset may be impacted.
Mhm. Yeah, so it seems like, there's lots of moving components. You have like the machine learning model, weather forecast, sensors, satellite data. And so, given all these components, like what would you say is maybe the biggest technical hurdle that you've faced in the past when applying sort of all these technologies together in your work?
Yeah, well, I think uh, that's also, well, so a lot of times when we're training our machine learning models, there's obviously a training data set that we use. And for the longest time, we've been using the past historical outage data from a utility as a training data set. But the problem is that, again, the weather patterns are getting unpredictable. So all the historical outage data would point towards, say, okay, for example, if I were to give you, say, for one particular utility, we saw that all storm-related outages occurred between the months of June to September. That is what the outage historical data shared with us. And when we fed that historical outage data, we were obviously able to just get the inputs. Our model would spit out that something very similar, that you're going to see outages in the months of June to September. But we know that the weather patterns are changing, right? So our biggest challenge then becomes, how do we get better training data for our model that is more aligned with, I would say, um, the unpredictability of
Mhm.
climate risk, and which is something that we are right now struggling with. Of course, like, the past 1 to 2 years definitely show that disparate pattern, but just 1 to 2 years of data is not enough as a training data set to fine tune the
Mhm.
model and get the best accuracy. So I think that's a challenge that we have. And I think that's a challenge that we've seen across the industry. And we're still figuring out the best way to deal with it. Of course, like having real time satellite, well, near real time satellite feed on weather forecast really helps. But that continues to be an ongoing challenge.
Mhm. Yeah, and so kind of going back to the topic about sort of equity, right? You mentioned how like these training data sets, how do you ensure that in the training data sets that certain areas, like wealthier areas, are not overrepresented compared to rural areas?
Well, I think the good thing about the I would say the customer base that we serve or the utilities that we serve is that regardless of which area their network goes through, like their network
Mm,
spans, like I said, the lines can be hundreds and thousands of miles. The utilities are mandated to ensure that all of their infrastructure is, I would say, protected or I would say operationally managed almost equally, right? So it's a mandate that comes from the regulatory authorities in each of the states. Now, of course, there is more effort that's taken into account. Okay, let me put it this way. So there are certain regions like urban regions, urban areas where there are natural fire breaks or storm breaks given, the housing infrastructure, the residential buildings, which don't require a lot of mitigation. But there are certain areas which we like to call wildland urban interface, WUI, which are more prone or at risk to climate disasters, specifically because these are small settlements at the border of or at the periphery of highly vegetated areas, which are most at risk. So I would like answer your questions differently in a way that, well, one, of course, the utilities are mandated to make sure that all of their network, no matter where it is, operationally sound. And the second piece is now the question is not really like which community, the question is which areas are most at risk in terms of their land use profile. And there we just tend to see more intersection of low income communities in wildland urban interfaces or WUI areas. And by default, because those areas are more susceptible, we've seen that in the past, utilities are taking more effort in protecting those WUI areas and making sure, like sometimes those areas are sort of marked as high wildfire risk areas. And just by designating them as high risk areas, of course, utilities end up spending more capital. For example, are doing double rotation vegetation trimming or doing maintenance more often to ensure that those high risk areas are uh, we're keeping the risk low in those high risk areas essentially.
mm. Yeah, that explanation makes sense. I think it's good to hear that, both AI Dash as well as sort of regulatory boards are ensuring that there's fairness all around. And so I guess my final question for you is for someone, especially young people who are interested in sort of working in the field of climate tech, what's sort of advice that you would give to someone that's looking to enter the field?
Wow. Well, I think the first idea is I am glad, first of all, that a lot of youngsters are even thinking about entering this space. I think that gives us a lot of I think I'm personally very happy. Um, I would say that start early. There are a lot of fellowships that are available for undergraduates, even for kids in high school, for you to understand different assets of climate tech. Like now, climate tech cuts across all different industries. If you're talking about
Mm,
cement industry all the way to oil and gas, climate tech has applications almost everywhere. So understand what are the different facets, like what is it that interests you? There's everything from hydrogen based fuel cells to carbon sequestration, looking at something called low concrete cement and steel, and all the way to like conventional energy like fusion reactors, solar hydroelectricity, etc. So there's a lot happening in this space. So try and understand as much as possible. Try and see if you can literally get your hands dirty. So reach out to startups, reach out to research organizations, see if you can be part of these organizations, do an internship possibly. Also do your own write papers, write blogs, like try and build your own understanding so that when as you move up or as you sort of are at an age where you can start working, you've already built your credibility and you've already built your knowledge base in this area. I definitely feel like um, there are certain areas that require more capital, more technical know-how than possibly others. climate tech is there are different parts to it, right? There is deep or hard tech, which is like actually building physical hardware, and of course, all the way to software stack, which is used to, I would say, like, which is used to possibly increase the efficiency of your hardware stack. So there's like an entire spectrum. And I think we need more engineers, we need more data scientists, we need more people like meteorologists to be in this space and try and build something. So I think someone who's sort of in the STEM space has a lot to offer in this area. So definitely build that, I would say. And I guess that's it. Just be passionate. I think this area definitely needs a lot more passionate people.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's really, amazing advice, very helpful, and definitely a powerful note to end on. So, Prajya, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experience and insights.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Arnav. I had a blast talking to you about this. This is a wonderful
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah, so that's all we have today on Voices for Climate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the show and share it with someone who cares more about building a more sustainable future. And I'll see you all next time.